Human raises abandoned alien predator cub that was the Empress's lost pet. The crash rattled the evening stillness, jolting Brandon from his half-sleep at his workbench. His tools clattered to the floor as he rushed to the window, heart pounding against his ribs. A streak of fire carved the twilight sky and disappeared behind the ridge a mile from his homestead. "Not again," he muttered, running a hand through his dark hair. The frontier planet of Arcturus IV had seen its share of meteorite impacts, but something about this one felt different. The trajectory was too controlled, too deliberate. Brandon grabbed his rifle and field pack out of habit. 5 years removed from military service had done little to dull his instincts. Outside, the air hung heavy with the scent of pine and scorched metal. Brandon moved with practiced efficiency through the underbrush, following the thin trail of smoke rising beyond the tree line. His exile here had been self-imposed after the incident that cost him his military career and the lives of 3 handlers under his command. The memory still burned, but the solitude had been his choice, his penance. The impact site came into view as he crested the ridge. This was no meteorite. The sleek oval craft had carved a furrow through the forest floor, its metallic skin glimmering with strange iridescence under the setting sun. Too small for a proper ship, it resembled the scout vessels he'd glimpsed in classified briefings years ago. "Hello," Brandon called out, rifle held ready as he approached. "Anyone alive in there?" The craft bore no markings he recognized, its design unlike anything in Earth's fleet or those of the known allied species. A fracture ran along one side, revealing a dimly lit interior. Brandon's training took over as he circled the vessel, looking for signs of threat before approaching the breach. The hatch had been forced open from the inside. Blood, or something like it, smeared the edge, a deep amber color that caught the fading light. Brandon swallowed hard and ducked into the opening. The interior was cramped, barely large enough for a pilot and small cargo area. The control console flickered with alien symbols he couldn't decipher, cycling through what appeared to be emergency protocols. In the rear compartment, something moved. Brandon raised his rifle, finger resting beside the trigger. "Show yourself," he commanded, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. A low growl answered from the shadows, followed by a weak, rattling breath. Brandon reached for the emergency light on his belt and illuminated the corner. What he saw made him lower his weapon immediately. Curled in the cargo hold was what appeared to be a large cat. No, not a cat. The creature resembled a tiger cub, but its proportions were wrong. Its head was too angular, ears too pointed, and its orange-black striped fur had an almost metallic quality where it caught the light. One of its front legs was clearly broken, and a gash ran along its side, leaking that strange amber fluid. The creature's eyes met his, intelligent, fierce, and unmistakably frightened. They were an impossible shade of amber, almost luminous in the dim light. "Easy now," Brandon whispered, holstering his weapon. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature bared its teeth, sharp, definitely predatory, but made no move to attack. It was too weak, its breathing labored. It couldn't have been more than the equivalent of a juvenile, whatever species it was. Brandon's mind raced through possibilities. No Earth animal matched its description, and the frontier worlds hosted nothing like it. This was something else entirely, something alien and potentially dangerous. The smart thing would be to report it immediately, but that would mean contact with the colonial authorities, questions about his past, and inevitably, the creature being taken for study. The cub growled again, but the sound tapered into a whimper that stirred something deep in Brandon's chest. He'd spent his career working with dangerous predators, training them for military applications until the program went catastrophically wrong. He recognized pain when he saw it. "Looks like we're both a long way from where we're supposed to be," he said softly, removing his pack and retrieving a medical kit. The creature's eyes tracked his movements, wary but alert. Brandon slowly extended his hand, palm down, the way he'd approached nervous predators in training. To his surprise, the cub stretched its neck forward and sniffed, then sank back, exhaustion overtaking fear. "I'm going to help you," Brandon said, knowing the words meant nothing to the creature, but hoping his tone conveyed his intent. "Then we'll figure out where you came from." He wrapped his jacket around his arm as a precaution and moved closer, tensing for an attack that never came. Instead, as he gently examined the broken leg, he felt something brush against his consciousness, a sensation he'd never experienced before, like fingertips lightly touching the surface of his mind. An image flashed behind his eyes, a vast chamber of gleaming metal and stone, and a tall, regal figure with similar markings to the cub's. The vision vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Brandon disoriented. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. The cub's eyes remained locked on his, a strange intelligence behind them that sent a shiver down his spine. Whatever this creature was, it was far more than a simple animal. As he carefully splinted the broken leg, Brandon made a decision he suspected he would come to regret. "Let's get you home and patched up," he said, gently lifting the surprisingly heavy cub. "But first—" He retrieved a small incendiary charge from his pack, another remnant of his military days, and set it inside the craft. Evidence of alien contact would bring authorities swarming to his sanctuary, and neither he nor his new charge needed that attention. As Brandon carried the injured creature back toward his homestead, the scout vessel erupted in flames behind him, erasing the evidence of its arrival. In his arms, the cub relaxed slightly, its breathing steadying against his chest. That night, as the sedative he'd administered took effect, and the cub slept on his workshop floor, Brandon sat watching it, unable to shake the feeling that his life had just irrevocably changed. He dozed off in his chair sometime before dawn, and for the first time in years, his dreams weren't filled with the screams of dying handlers. Instead, he dreamed of amber eyes and a palace of stone and metal beneath 3 strange moons. 3 weeks had passed since Brandon brought the alien cub into his home. The creature's recovery continued to defy his expectations. The broken leg had begun to heal at an astonishing rate, and the gash along its side had already sealed into a thin silver line. "You're something special, aren't you?" Brandon murmured as he changed the splint for a smaller brace. The cub watched him with those penetrating amber eyes, alert and calculating. In the weeks since the crash, it had made no attempt to escape or attack, instead observing Brandon's every move with unnerving focus. It accepted food, raw meat from his stores, and water, but maintained a cautious distance whenever possible. Brandon had taken to calling her Alora, though he couldn't explain why the name had come to him. It simply felt right, as though whispered to him in his increasingly vivid dreams of alien landscapes and distant stars. "Easy, Alora," he said as he finished securing the brace. "Another week and you might not need this at all." The cub's ear twitched at the name, and Brandon felt that now familiar brush against his mind, light but unmistakable. These moments had become more frequent, usually when he spoke to her directly or when their eyes met for extended periods. A series of beeps from his communication console interrupted the moment. Brandon tensed. The monthly supply drone would arrive tomorrow, and that meant a routine check-in call from the colonial outpost. He looked at Alora, who had already retreated to the corner of the workshop where she'd made her den from blankets he'd provided. "Stay," he whispered unnecessarily. The cub hadn't followed him around the homestead yet, preferring to remain hidden when not being tended to. Brandon accepted the call, positioning himself to block any view of the workshop behind him. The supply coordinator's face appeared on screen, bored and perfunctory. "Resident Brandon Reeves' monthly welfare check, all systems functioning?" "All good here," Brandon replied, keeping his voice neutral. "No issues to report." "Supply drone arrives 0800 tomorrow. Any special requests?" "Nothing new." The coordinator nodded, already looking past this conversation to the next task. Colonial Authority reminds all isolationist permit holders that quarterly in-person psychological evaluations are mandatory. Your next assessment is due in 3 weeks. Brandon's jaw tightened. The evaluations were the price of his solitude, a way for the authority to ensure that frontier hermits weren't descending into dangerous instability. I'll be there. The call ended, and Brandon exhaled slowly. 3 weeks until he'd have to leave Alora alone and travel to the outpost. The thought troubled him more than it should. A soft sound from behind made him turn. Alora had emerged from her corner and stood watching him, head tilted in what looked remarkably like concern. "It's nothing," he said, then wondered why he was reassuring an alien predator. That night, as Brandon drifted to sleep, the connection that had been forming between them surged with unexpected intensity. His dreams were vivid impressions, the sensation of running on 4 powerful limbs, the taste of strange meats, the comfort of nestling against a larger version of Alora. But underlying these experiences was something more profound, emotions and fragments of thoughts that were decidedly not his own. He woke with a start, dawn light filtering through his window. Something felt different. Brandon reached for his sidearm out of habit, then froze as he sensed a presence in the room. Alora stood at the foot of his bed, watching him with those intelligent eyes. She had never entered his sleeping quarters before. "How did you?" he began, then gasped as a clear, directed thought formed in his mind. "Danger coming." The voice, if it could be called that, was feminine, alien, yet perfectly understandable. Brandon sat up slowly, heart racing. "Did you just—" "Yes, finally hear me. Took long time." Brandon stared at the cub, mind reeling. "You can communicate telepathically." "Only with bonded. You saved. We bonded." "Bonded? What are you? Where did you come from?" Images flashed through Brandon's mind faster than he could process them. Vast starships, a society of beings with both feline and humanoid features, and recurring images of a regal female figure seated on a throne of what appeared to be living metal. "I am Alora, royal guardian to Empress Vashara. Must hide. They search." Brandon moved to the window and scanned the morning sky. Nothing seemed amiss, but he had learned to trust his instincts, and now, apparently, those of an alien telepathic predator. "Who's searching for you?" Alora padded to his side, her movements more fluid than days before. Her recovery was progressing even faster than he'd thought. "Some loyal, some traitor, not know which find first." "Great," Brandon muttered, "just when I thought my life couldn't get more complicated." He felt a ripple of what seemed like amusement from Alora, followed by a wave of determination that resonated through their connection. "We'll protect you. You protected me." Brandon looked down at the alien cub, realizing with sudden clarity that his life of isolation had come to an end. Whatever Alora was, wherever she came from, they were now bound together in ways he was only beginning to understand. "Well," he said with resignation, "I guess we're in this together now." Alora blinked her acknowledgement, and Brandon felt the strangest sensation, like coming home after a very long absence. "Again!" Brandon commanded, watching as Alora navigated the makeshift obstacle course he'd constructed behind the homestead. The alien predator moved with increasing grace, her injured leg barely slowing her as she leaped barriers and ducked under hanging ropes. 2 more weeks had passed, and Alora's physical recovery was nothing short of miraculous. What astounded Brandon more was her intelligence. Military animal training had not prepared him for a creature that could not only understand complex instructions, but anticipate them through their growing telepathic bond. "Too simple," Alora projected into his mind. "Challenge me." Brandon smirked. "All right, show off. Try this." He activated a series of unpredictable motion sensors he'd repurposed from his security system. Alora responded instantly, weaving through the random pattern with preternatural awareness. Brandon felt a ghost of her movements in his own muscles, their connection allowing him brief sensory glimpses through her perception. "Incredible," he whispered. Later, as they shared a meal, raw meat for her, synthesized protein for him, Brandon felt her curiosity probing at his memories. "Why alone here? You trained many like me before." "Not like you," Brandon corrected. "Earth animals, less intelligent, though dangerous enough." He hesitated, then allowed the painful memory to surface. "There was an accident. The neural implants we used to enhance control, they malfunctioned. 3 handlers died when the subjects went berserk." Alora's ears flattened against her head, sensing his guilt. "Not your fault. I designed the system," Brandon said quietly. "Their blood is on my hands." Elora moved closer, pressing her warm body against his leg in a gesture that felt surprisingly comforting. "Different now. Our bond natural, better." Brandon reached down to stroke her head, a gesture she'd only recently begun to tolerate. Through their connection, he felt her contentment mingled with wariness, constant vigilance that he now understood was part of her nature as a royal guardian. "Tomorrow the supply drone comes," he said. "We need to keep you hidden. If Colonial Authority discovers you, we'll hide, always alert." As dusk fell, Brandon couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Their bond had grown strong enough that sometimes he couldn't distinguish between his intuition and Alora's instincts. Either way, something was coming, something that would change everything. Brandon woke to a strange warmth beside him. Half asleep, he reached out, expecting to feel Alora's fur. His hand touched smooth skin. His eyes snapped open. Where the tiger-like cub had been now lay a figure both alien and humanoid. She still bore the distinctive orange and black markings, but her form had elongated. Her face retained feline features, the pointed ears, slitted pupils, and amber eyes, but the structure was now unmistakably feminine. A mane of fiery red hair cascaded down her back. Brandon jerked away, falling from the bed in shock. She sat up, movements fluid despite her transformation. Yes, change complete. Humanoid. Tigaran true form, cub form for protection during growth. Brandon struggled to process this revelation. You were never just an animal. Never animal, royal guardian. Her eyes met his, communication flowing more easily through their bond. Bond accelerated metamorphosis, not expected so soon. Approaching cautiously, Brandon studied her transformed features. The being before him matched the image in his dreams, a Tigaran, part of an advanced species he'd never encountered in any briefing on known galactic civilizations. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Could not. Mine too simple before metamorphosis." Through their connection, Brandon felt the complexity of her thoughts now. Strategic assessments, cultural knowledge, and something more personal directed at him. Something like affection, but deeper. "The Empress," Brandon said, recalling the recurring figure from their shared dreams. "You mentioned her before. You're her. What exactly?" "Guardian, companion we bond from birth." "Then why are you here? What happened?" Alora's expression darkened. Assassination attempt. Escaped with evidence. Crashed here. She reached for him, her touch sending electricity through their bond. Brandon felt her memories, the attack, her flight, the sabotage that damaged her vessel. "So the Empress thinks you're dead?" "Unless Bond tells her different." Brandon's mind raced with implications. "And now you've bonded with me instead?" Alora's lips curved in what was almost a smile, not instead, additionally unprecedented. Her hand remained on his, and through their connection flowed a new sensation, desire, complex and overwhelming. Brandon pulled back.